Folks, the House Democrats are picking their committee leadership, and there have been some changes. Longtime Agricultural Committee ranking Democrat David Scott has lost his position. He was voted out. There were lots of concerns over his health and stewardship of the committee, but the one folks have been talking about is the House Oversight Committee, where Gary Connolly has been battling Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Well, there was a leadership vote, then there was a total caucus vote. AOC lost out to Connolly. Now, here's the concern. Connolly is 74 years old, is battling esophageal cancer. And then you have Ocasio-Cortez, who's a younger member. And you've got a lot of folks who have been on social media saying, here go Democrats again, screwing this thing up. The reality, Mustafa, Congress is about seniority. That's what they look at. But I think it is important. Here you have, an 84-year-old Nancy Pelosi, who was against AOC, pushing Connolly. And I get seniority, I get knowledge and expertise. But also, I think it is important to have some younger, fresher voices leading the charge, especially against these crazy, demented MAGA people. And I think this is an example where just like, when, the Democrats, they chose to lead the Communications and Policy Committee. They chose Congresswoman Debbie Dingell over Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. And I'll tell you, if I look at the last 2 years, who has spent more time speaking on behalf of Democrats nationally and national media, it's been Congresswoman Crockett and not Congresswoman Dingell.
Yeah, when you have youthful members who have experience, because many of these folks who we've just, talked about, they've been in the fire, they bring this energy that is so needed in this moment. You need that energy to be able to push back against all the craziness and chaos that's going to be coming. You need it also to sort of mobilize folks around the country for them to get excited and seeing someone who's able to articulate a message in a way that resonates with them. And we know that if we're going to have an honest conversation, that when it comes to younger people, they're trying to make some decisions about whom they want to support moving forward over probably the next decade. So it'd be great if they see somebody who they feel that they connect with and somebody whom, carries their values. Now, full transparency, I worked for John Conyers when he was chairman of Judiciary Committee, and he had been there for a long time. He knew the ins and outs. But we've got to have a mix so we can honor our elders and the wisdom and experience that they bring. But you've got to have that innovation and ingenuity and energy that younger members bring, especially in this particular moment.
And the thing here, Larry, Ocasio-Cortez, she's 35 years old. It's not like she is wet behind the ears. She's been there. And I can tell you, when you look at how she prepares for these committee hearings, she's very prepared. This is an example where I believe the Democrats desperately need youthful leadership. Even though when the leadership stepped down, when Nancy Pelosi, Steny Hoyer, Congressman Jim Clyburn, all three still remain in Congress. And they're still there, and all of them over the age of 80. And this is just a perfect example of where you do need fresh voices, fresh perspectives when it comes to the new challenges the party faces.
So the Democratic Party needs a communication reset. And so you talked about Congresswoman AOC, obviously just losing the vote this afternoon. And there are a lot of red flags with this. You just talked about, former, Nancy Pelosi, former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, behind the scenes working the phones and working members quite hard to make sure AOC wasn't the chair of the committee. Now, as Mustafa said, we were both congressional staffers and worked for senior members who were either chair or ranking members on committees. And listen, I get the seniority system and how it works. But when you talked about Congresswoman AOC and then you mentioned Congresswoman Crockett, both extraordinary communicators to communicate to a new generation of voters. So you have to appeal, particularly we saw the electorate and we saw some young voters, mostly white voters, lean more right, but also a lot of, voters from minoritized backgrounds not sit out and not vote. You need to re-energize the base and those individuals who feel disenchanted, don't feel like the party is speaking for them. This is not the way to go to do it. one of the things I want to add is you mentioned Congresswoman Crockett. I think I read after she lost recently in terms of the opportunity for a post to Congresswoman Dingell that she said she wasn't going to seek a leadership position again. So you can't do this. Another challenge the Democrats are going to have when it comes to, these young members, particularly who are excellent communicators, is they may decide just to, serve their constituents and do less press. Congresswoman AOC really campaigned extraordinarily hard for VP Harris. She was everywhere. And so was Congresswoman Crockett. You have to do a better job empowering the next generation. And the biggest complaint when people talk about term limits is exactly what we see here. Members of Congress who've been around for decades advocating for someone else who's been around for a long time, and while at the same time ignoring that you need a new generation of voices. Listen, Roland, going back to Dr. King, and he understood this, right? You need to have another generation, empower young people to make sure that your legacy lives on after you're gone.
Well, Derek, when it comes to Congress, their notion of empowering young people is to put them in charge when they're 60.
And that's the sad part, Roland. You cannot encourage those under the age of 35 telling them, wait your turn. I mean, we're all young enough to remember when there was a young Barack Obama, and a lot of the senior Democrats said to Barack, wait your turn. Now is not your turn. And Barack, he resisted that. He said, no, there's an urgency of now. Here's the other point that I would definitely want to add to what Larry and Mustafa has already articulated, Roland. I read something where the average age for Democrats up on the Hill is 66. The average age for Republican is 50. And so we got to, as a Democrat, we got to ask ourselves, are we going to be about this fight, or are we going to do the status quo? See, because status quo, in my humble opinion, is not going to get us where we need to be in 2025 and 2026. We have some very strong young leaders who have truly proven that they understand the issues. They can be about that young base to help us win. So I say to those like James Carville, who continue to repeat the same old story over and over again the last 3 decades, that they know best. And so I say to James Carville, we appreciate what you said, appreciate where you all got us. Now it's our turn.
Well, I'd also say you don't actually need a title to actually make these appearances, to go on air. And so that's one of the things that's important. I've never believed that. I mean, when I was in my 20s and 30s, I couldn't stand when people say, it's time to pass the baton. I'm like, listen, y'all can keep the baton. We run a whole different race. Y'all knock yourselves out. And so that's the approach I've always taken, and I will continue to take.
Hi, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Fanbase is a free to download, free to use, next generation social media platform that allows anyone to have followers and subscribers on the same page. Fanbase was built through investment dollars from equity crowdfunding from the Jobs Act. People just like you helped build Fanbase, and we're looking for more people to help build Fanbase. We are currently raising $17 million in a Regulation 8 crowdfund on Start Engine. We've already crossed $2.1 million, but we're looking to raise more capital from people just like you that deserve the opportunity to invest in early stage startups without having to be accredited investors. So right now, I'd like you to go to startengine.com/fanbase and invest. The minimum to invest is $399. That gets you 60 shares of stock in Fanbase right now, today. And then use Fanbase to connect with friends, grow your audience, and be you without limits.